stand out
One more of
so
those.
people remember us?
Yes.
Emotional.
So that we're understood, remembered, and we have a lasting impact. That's why we want to make it sticky. And you want to be able to change your audience, clients, friends, child's opinion or behavior. And we do that by making our ideas a little bit more sticky. If you're trying to teach a student mitosis, and the next week when you come back, they only 3 students in the entire class remember what mitosis is, you're not being effective. So what we're trying to do is make our ideas stick more with people. We want to change their behaviors. So that's why we're learning how to make our ideas sticky. Anybody interested in making their ideas sticky? Okay, good. Then I'm in the right place. Okay. So last week we talked about, and we gave an example of the ice-filled tub and the kidney heist. So after that, we talked about what is the biggest impediment to making our ideas sticky. What is the biggest impediment? It had to do with listening and tapping.
Okay.
Trying to communicate your idea.
Right.
Because what you're thinking in your head isn't what.
Right. It's called the curse
Yeah.
of knowledge.
Yeah.
Remember that? Everybody say it.
Curse
Curse
of
of knowledge. Very good. Because what one person, in the case of Steve and our listener here, what's your name? Thane, that's it.
Have you ever been called the listener before?
Not by my wife.
So we tapped out, Steve tapped out a song that we told him, which was Happy Birthday, for those of you that weren't here. And Thane was just to listen to the tap, and he was supposed to be able to pick up, and he did, actually, very well. But what happens is there's a disconnect because we cannot unlearn what we know, what our knowledge. So if Michael's talking to me as a mortgage man, a mobile mortgage man, he has a certain amount of knowledge and understanding of his profession, but I don't. And oftentimes, even in here, I've heard it, we talk to each other and we talk in our lingo and our language. And we express things in a certain way, but the person that's receiving that doesn't oftentimes have that same expertise, so they don't get the same message. So when we're communicating, it's the curse of knowledge that prevents us oftentimes from getting our ideas or presentations or whatever it is that we're trying to communication across to the other person. So there's only 2 ways to beat the curse of knowledge, and that's 1, don't learn anything, or 2, take your ideas and transform them. And that's what this book is about. So we talked about 6 principles of sticky ideas, and that's what you have in front of you. And we went over them briefly last week, and there's an acronym for it, which is SUCCESS. If you take the first one, simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotions, and stories, it spells out success without the last S on
It's a
there.
silent S.
Yeah. So that's a great way to keep that in mind. So there are 6 principles that will help you make your ideas more sticky. So briefly, I want to talk about a study that was done in Israel in 1999 by a research team. They took 200 highly regarded ads. These were award-winning ads, and broke them down, and they found 6 elements that made those ads consistently the best ads. And they found that 89% of the winning ads could be classified into 6 basic categories, or templates. That's a good word to use, templates. Then they went ahead and they took a group of people and they explained to them how they were going to have them make the ads. They wanted to see if people could be taught using these templates how to go ahead and make ads that were good. And so they started immediately by breaking up 3 groups. The first group they had 3 items. One was a shoe, one was a diet, and one was a shampoo that they were supposed to go ahead and promote and come up with ads. So the first group of people they took and They had no training, but they just said these are the items, and we want you guys to go ahead and make ads. So they started generating these ads. The top 15 ads of the first group were taken by an creative executive director that did not know how these ads were coming about, how they were being made. He took the top 15 of these ads, and then he went and consumer tested it. And what happened is that the consumers were annoyed by these ads. So no training, they were annoyed. They found the ads annoying. So the second group were trained for 2 hours by the creative director on how to use free association. Now, some of you have probably been to these kind of trainings where it's just brainstorming. And it's free association, and it's believed to be real creative in their approach. You just, free-flowing ideas. So they took those ads, long and short of it, they took those ads and, again, consumer tested them, and then they found that they were less annoying than the first group, but they were still annoying. So then the third group was trained for 2 hours on how to use the creative templates that they had found in these ads. The 6 items that they found in these ads. They took them, trained them for 2 hours, and then the creative director again took those top 15 ads, and the ads tested on consumers the ads came out 50% more creative than the other 2 groups, just from 2 hours of training on how to use the templates. And they produced 55% more positive attitude towards the products that were advertised.
So is this 2 hours of training or 4 hours of training?
2 hours of training on how to use templates. So where I'm going with this is that these are the templates for this book, for the communications, not for the ads, but these are the templates for the communications. So these are the ideas that will help make your ideas more sticky. And a lot of people think that you have to be very creative to do ads. And you don't. It can be, what I'm trying to go with is it can be trained. Once you have the template, and this is the template for making things more sticky, then you can go ahead and not only make your ideas more sticky, but you also have the ability to see sticky ideas. I'm sorry, Judge Gilly. Okay, so I used to do group facilitation. That was one of the things that I did back in my days when I was nursing and doing chemical dependency and also psych. And one of the things that my teacher used to say was, is that you don't work harder than the group works. So we're going to put you guys to work this morning. Okay? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to talk about simplicity. Principles number 1 is simplicity. And I'd like somebody to go ahead and read that. So,
how do we find the essential core of our ideas? A successful defense lawyer says, if you argue 10 points, even if each is a good point, when they get back to the jury room, they won't remember any. To strip an idea down to its core, we must be masters of exclusion. We must relentlessly prioritize. Saying something short is not the mission. Sound bites are not the idea. Proverbs are the ideal. We must create ideas that are both simple and profound. The golden rule is the ultimate model of simplicity. One sentence statement so profound that an individual could spend a lifetime learning to follow it.
So what's the golden rule?
Simplicity.
Do unto others as you want them unto you.
Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's very simple. You could spend a lifetime trying to master that one idea. Proverbs are short and sweet, not sound bites, because sound bites oftentimes don't have any meat to them. They're just fluff, so to speak. So when we're trying to get our ideas across, a bird in the hand is worth
2 in the bush.
It's simple and it sticks with people. Okay, so what he's saying here on this particular one, I found really illuminating, is that when you're teaching like what I'm doing this morning, people are going to walk away with 3 ideas. There's a rule called the rule of 5. And so 3 plus 2 either way. When you teach people something, they'll walk away with 3 ideas. The mind has the capability of remembering 3 ideas. You add one more, and it becomes a little bit more challenging, and when you get up to 5, a little bit more challenging. And then after that, they're probably not going to take away anything more than that, because the mind works that way. So when the lawyer is saying, you know, if you tell 10 people, you tell 10 ideas or some 10 points that you want to try to get across, they're not going to get any of them. So when you're trying to get a point across, you want it to be simple, and not simple in the sense of stupid or dumbing it down. You want to make it so that it's very simple and easy for people to grasp. In other words, when you're communicating with people, don't make it challenging for them to get what it is that you're trying to do. This principle could also be called the core, and we're going to talk about that next week. It's the core of your message. And it's actually number 1 is what I found is the most profound part of this book. And we're going to talk about that more next week. The takeaway that I got from this is what we're going to spend the most time on. But it's not the dumbing down. 6 months from now, when you walk away and you're having a communication, you're going, oh yeah, I want to make this stick. Don't think that it's simple, meaning simple, dumbing it down. If you look up, you know, what simple means in the dictionary, it's not that. It's getting your point across simply. It's the core of your idea. What is it that you're trying to bring? Okay. So, principle number 2, unexpectedness. Somebody want to pick that one up?
How do we get our audience to pay attention to our ideas, and how do we maintain their interest when we need time to get the ideas across? We need to violate people's expectations. We need to be counterintuitive. A bag of popcorn is as unhealthy as a whole day's worth of fatty foods, but it's really good with butter on it. We can use surprise, an emotion whose function is to increase alertness and cause focus to grab people's attention. But surprise doesn't last. For our idea to endure, we must generate interest and curiosity. How do you keep students engaged during the 48th history class of the year? We can engage people's curiosity over a long period of time by systematically opening gaps in their knowledge and then filling those gaps.
Okay. So we talked about the bag of popcorn and the study that they were trying to do, and we found out that eating a bag of popcorn at the theater is equivalent to eating a table full of fatty foods. Okay, and so to get their point across, they laid out on the table all the fatty foods that equals 37 grams of fat, because they were trying to get people to understand how much 37 grams of fat is, as opposed to just putting out a bar graph and saying this is how much fat. So you want to get your idea across in a way that people are going to understand it. So when you're communicating with people, you want to be counterintuitive. You don't want to. Most people, again, they're listening with their paradigm. They're listening with their understanding to what it is, the message that you're trying to get across. And so you have to break that paradigm, so to speak. You have to give them something that's going to stop them, so to speak, so that you can get your message across. Surprise works great, but it doesn't last long. So you have to open their knowledge gap, and then you supply, because the brain works in such a way it wants to learn. We're learning creatures. So if you can help somebody by, say, asking a question or something like that, and then filling in the information, it's going to be much more sticky. Okay, principle number 3. Somebody want to read that? Anybody?
Finish chewing.
Oh, okay.
Do it. Concreteness. How do we make our ideas clear? We must explain our ideas in terms of human actions, in terms of sensory information. This is where so much business communication goes awry. Mission statements, synergies, strategies, visions, they're all often ambiguous to the point of being meaningless. Naturally, sticky ideas are full of concrete images. Ice-filled bathtubs, apples with razors, because our brains are wired to remember concrete data. In Proverbs, abstract truths are often encoded in concrete language. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Speaking concretely is the only way to ensure that your idea will mean the same thing to everyone in our audience.
That one's pretty self-explanatory. Oftentimes we speak over people instead of speaking to people. And if you can make your idea very concrete, you have a better chance of getting your idea across. Credibility.
I'll read it.
Okay.
How do we make people believe our ideas? When the former Surgeon General, Everett Koop, talks about a public health issue, most people accept his ideas without skepticism. But in most day-to-day situations, we don't enjoy this authority. Sticky ideas have to carry their own credentials. We need ways to help people test our ideas for themselves, a try-before-you-buy philosophy for the world of ideas. When we're trying to build a case for something, most of us instinctively grasp for hard numbers. But in many cases, this is exactly the wrong approach. In the Seoul U.S. presidential debate, Seoul U.S. presidential debate in 1980 between Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter, Reagan could have cited innumerable statistics demonstrating the sluggishness of the economy. Instead, he asked a simple question that allowed voters to test for themselves. Before you vote, ask yourself if you are better off today than you were 4 years ago.
I know that I have, and I'm guessing that probably everybody in here has sat through a meeting at one time where they go ahead and give you a bunch of statistics. But the brain, again, doesn't work that way. The brain is very visual. So if you can bring, and especially nowadays, bring multimedia into it somehow, or make that point across without running statistics or running numbers, it's much easier for the brain to grasp that and to hold on to it, especially in short-term memory. So unless you're in a position, even when you're in a position of authority, when you're giving statistics, oftentimes it's a hard, and we oftentimes want to fall back on giving statistics and say, well, you know, this is 21% of this or what. So you want to find different ways to get your point across without using numbers. So when Ronald Reagan says, before you vote, ask yourself if you're better off today than you were 4 years ago. In the when President Clinton was doing his campaign, Clinton likes to pontificate. He likes to really talk about things and be on top of it. So James Carville, his person that was in charge of his campaign, thank you, I could put the word together, said to him, he said, you know, you have to keep it, because Ross Perot was running at that particular time, and President Clinton wanted to talk about a balanced budget, which thank goodness we actually did get a balanced budget from him when he was in there, but he wanted to talk about it, and James Carville said, no, it's about the economy, stupid, when he was talking to you have to stay on point, 1 point, focus on that 1 point, and that's what he did. And it was hard for Clinton because he wanted to talk about everything, and so again it comes back
So
to
did Perot.
and Perot got out. He didn't stick to it. So
Wasn't sticky.
okay, principle number 5.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Short.
Emotions. How do we get people to care about our ideas? We make them feel something. Research shows that people are more likely to make a charitable gift to a single needy individual than to an entire impoverished region. We are wired to feel things for people, not for abstractions. Sometimes the hard part is finding the right emotion to harness. For instance, it's difficult to get teenagers to quit smoking by instilling in them a fear of the consequences. But it's easier to get them to quit by tapping into the resentment of the duplicity of big tobacco.
Right. So if you look at the commercials that are oftentimes put out by the Ad Council and some of the commercials out there, especially on smoking, let's take a look at that. How many of you remember the commercial where they go outside of Big Tobacco, outside of their building, and they all start to lay down on the street? And again, who is that geared towards? That's geared towards younger people. And it's exactly speaking to this, because if you say, you know, smoking is bad for you, it causes this health problem, it causes this, they don't care. But if you can get them invested, and it's like, okay, let's give it to the man, then you know, then they're much more willing to get involved. We are emotional creatures. So the reason that you remember the ice-filled bathtub from last week is because there was an emotional impact, right? There was surprise. There may have been disgust. There might have been all these emotions. I think Alan pointed out last week. He was talking about fear. So emotions are part of our day-to-day communication with each other. And if you can bring that aspect into your communications, it's going to make it much more stickier.
I just wanted to know how much you can actually get for getting on
Okay, principle number 6, stories.
You have a bathtub full of ice and you're ready to go.
I'll volunteer.
Okay.
How do we get people to act on our ideas? We tell stories. Firefighters naturally swap stories after every fire, and by doing so, they multiply their experience. After years of hearing stories, they have a richer, more complete mental catalog of critical situations they might confront during a fire and the appropriate responses to these situations. Research shows that mentally rehearsing a situation helps us perform better when we encounter that situation in the physical environment. Similarly, hearing stories acts as a kind of mental flight simulator, preparing us to respond more quickly and effectively.
Mei Wei has been talking to us since she first started about stories. Putting them on the internet and expressing your story about your business. When you're talking to people, we use stories to communicate all the time. And now, more so than any time that I can remember, this is the way to communicate. Whether you're giving a presentation, whether you're talking to somebody, tell them a story because it involves people more directly because they can begin to relate. And so I'm seeing it everywhere. Stories are just becoming the thing. And we buy into, there's a buy-in when we tell stories, and we tell stories about ourselves, about our project, about why we're doing something. Bring it back to stories if you have an opportunity to interject that, because it brings an emotional component into there as well, ties in some of these other things, your credibility. So stories are the way to go.
Right, and look at the number one ad for Super Bowl is the Budweiser commercial with the dog
Yeah.
and the horse. And so it really encompasses a lot of what we're talking about here because it's a story, really tugs on your heartstrings, so it really brings in the emotions, there's credibility, and somehow it all ties into beer. But, it's more about the story than saying that the statistics about Budweiser and it's the number one beer and this is why you should drink it.
Yeah.
No, it's something really unrelated in the grand scheme of things, but somehow it all comes together.
I had a client tell me about that story. I didn't see the Budweiser, but I heard about it from one of my clients. And conversely, when I go to a client's house, oftentimes they'll say, "How you doing?" We're doing our little chit-chat before we get started and stuff like that. They'll tell me a story, or I'll tell them a story, or I came in here this morning. I said, "Yeah, no, I had to go and let somebody in the house last night, because they were locked out." It's all about stories, and it's how we communicate. So, at the bottom here it says there are 6. These are the 6 principles of successful ideas. To summarize, here's our checklist for creating a successful idea: simple, unexpected, concrete, credential, thank you, new tongue, emotional story. That's your checklist. So if you want an idea to stick, those are the things that you're looking for in a sticky idea. So next week we're going to be talking about principle number 1, simplicity. But really, they called it simplicity just to make the acronym success kind of stick so that you have a way to peg it in your memory. But it's really about the core, and it's the most profound part of this book I found is in the core, finding out, and I hope to be able, for us to have this time to be able to really take a look at what is the core of your business. What is the core message that you want to get across to somebody else? And when I did this for myself, I was just blown away because I'm very succinct. It's very succinct, and you really get down to what is. It's like David, the statue David, right? So how did he find David? They asked him, well, how did you come up with this statue? How did you make David? He said, I chipped away everything that wasn't David. And that's what you have to do with the core of your business and your message. And so we're going to talk about that next week, and I hope that it will help to make things a little more clear and a little more sticky for you. So that's it.
Very good. Thank you.